Hello class. Today we're going to talk about what's my expression. So what have we done so far? First thing, we know that an expression, we can make a t-chart from it. So in this particular one, we would come up here and we would see the 3x minus 2. So one of the things that I've taught you to do is change your subtraction to addition next to its opposite to help prevent careless mistakes. And then we evaluate this expression for the values of -2 through +2. So we would take our -2 and we would plug it in. 3 times -2 plus -2, and then we would do our math. So 3 times -2 gives us -6, plus -2 gives us -8. Then we would go to the next one. The x value now changes. So 3 times -1 plus -2. So 3 and -1 make -3, plus -2 gives us -5. Then we would do the same for 0. 3 times 0 plus -2. 3 times 0 is 0, plus -2 gives us a -2. Now what I've taught you to do at this point is look for the patterns. What are we doing? Okay, and you'll notice that we are increasing by 3 because on a number line, we're going from -8 to -5 to -2. We're traveling in the right or to the right. So that means we are increasing. Okay, sometimes with the negative numbers, it's hard to tell. So if I increase by 3 again, I end up with 1 and then 4. So one of the patterns that you do see is that we are increasing by 3. And that's one of the things I need you looking for is what are some patterns that you notice are consistent in every single problem that we do. Okay, so that's one of those patterns that we see. Okay, now one of the things I want you to look at as we were working the first couple of questions is, can you predetermine what this pattern is going to be based on looking at the expression? So let's do another one. Okay, so now we have 2x plus 4, and we're evaluating for the same x values. So we would plug in our -2 into the x spot. So 2 times -2 plus 4. Well, 2 and -2 make -4. -4 plus 4 gives us 0. Okay, then we do the same thing for the next one. 2 times -1 plus 4. So 2 times -1 gives us -2, plus +4 gives us 2. And then 2 times 0 plus 4 gives us 4. So what do we notice is happening? We are adding 2 each time. So we end up with 6 and 8. So again, do we notice some consistent patterns? Okay, and you'll notice that, yes, again, here our pattern is 2. So is there a way that I can predetermine what that pattern is? And I hope you're noticing that there is. Let's do one more, and then we'll see. Okay, because what it appears to be is that if I'm increasing by 3 here, this number right here tells me that I'm increasing by 3. I'm increasing by 2. Oh, look at this number right here. I'm increasing by 2. So if that number tells us our pattern, what is this one going to tell us? Okay, so here we change our subtraction to addition next to its opposite, and we begin. So plug in the -2. So -2 times -2 plus -2. It's a lot of -2's there. So -2 and -2 makes 4. 4 plus -2 gives us 2. Now, if that is true, I should be, instead of increasing by 2, I should be decreasing by 2. So my next value then, hopefully, we'll see, is it 0. Okay, if that's true, then I bet that number right there tells us what our pattern is. So -2 times -1 plus -2. Well, -2 times -1 is 2. 2 plus -2 does give us our 0. Okay, so that number there does tell us our pattern number. So we're decreasing by 2. So if I'm going to decrease by 2, this one's going to be a -2, -4, -6. Okay, so we understand that this number, the number, our coefficient, the number with our variable, tells us our pattern. Okay, so that one was 3, this one is 2, this one is -2. But what about that other number? What does it do? Do you see it anywhere in the t-chart? Well, hopefully you see that this number right here is always found as the y value when x is 0. The y value when x is 0. The y value when x is 0. Okay, so it always happens that way. So what we want to do then is we want to be able to figure out a way to fill in this t-chart without having to actually do all that work. Okay, so if we know that this number is going to be our pattern number, and this number is always going to be found when y is equal to, is the y value when x is equal to 0. I should just be able to take this number 4, plug it into the 0 spot, because it's going, if I plug in 0, 0 plus 4 gives us 4, and the number in front of our x, which we know if there's not 1, there is a 1 there, it says I'm going to increase by 1. So this will be 5, 6, and then if I go backwards, 3, and 2. And that's the fast way of filling out a T-chart. So now we need to learn what these numbers actually mean and what they represent. So we have this general form, and if we look at the standard that we are asked to teach about in the 8th grade, it is we're going to be writing an equation in the form of y equals mx plus b to model a linear relationship between two quantities using verbal, numerical, tabular, and graphical representations. So that's basically our BBOA, where we have a model, we translate it into an expression, we take that expression and we create a T-chart out of it, and then we graph it. And that's what we're looking at right now, is this y equals mx plus b. So in this T-chart, this slope idea, this number that's in front of the x, we call it our slope because it refers to our m. Okay, and it determines the pattern in our T-chart. Okay, our y-intercept is called our b. Okay, and that's going to be our y value when x is 0. Now the reason why we call it the y-intercept is because it's really going to tell us the point at which our graph, when we graph this, will cross the y-axis. So what does m and b stand for, the slope and y-intercept? They really mean this right here. The slope, we use it to determine the steepness of the graph. Okay, so the bigger that number, the steeper the graph. The smaller the number, the flatter the graph. If it's a negative number, it's going to be a graph that's going downhill versus uphill. And the y-intercept is the y value when x is 0. So the next few T-charts, what we're going to do is I'm going to give you a filled-in T-chart, and you're going to give me the expression. Okay, so let's see if we can practice that. So every expression that we're going to do in 7th and 8th grade is going to come in the form of blank x plus blank, which fits that form, y is equal to mx plus b, where m is our slope and b is our y-intercept. So the first thing I suggest that you find is slope. So we're going to find our pattern number. Okay, we're going to look at our pattern number right here. Our pattern is increasing by 1. Okay, now, so that number goes right there. Now we look at what happens when x is 0. What is our y value? 1. So now an intelligent person, once they find the expression, will always check their answer just to make sure. Take one of your x values and plug it in. So I'm going to plug this 2 in. 1 times 2 plus 1. Well, 1 times 2 is 2, plus 1 is 3, and it works. Okay, so let's try another one. What about this one right here? Okay, so now, again, same kind of thing. This number, the number, our coefficient, the number with our x, the number we call our slope, it's going to be determined by the pattern in our T-chart. So here our pattern is 2. Okay, so our slope is 2, and our y value when x is 0 is 4. Okay, so if we check one just to make sure, let's check it with 2 here. 2 times 2 plus 4, well 2 times 2 is 4, plus 4 does give us 8. Now that's basically how we find our expression. Now in the next video, we'll look at that a little bit more in depth. So until next time,